Your boy John the Liquidator coming back with another video. Look like the Indiana Fever front office has a tough hand to deal with this offseason. New information has been revealed about free agency, guys. For this one here, we got to go all the way up to Indy. Let's get it.
The Indiana Fever are heading into what could be the most unpredictable and pressure-filled offseason in WNBA history. While the spotlight shines on Caitlin Clark's record-breaking run, the front office is quietly facing a maze of high-stakes decisions, the kind that could build a dynasty or end an era before it ever peaks. Time isn't on their side. Beneath all the excitement, few realize just how fragile this roster truly is. What looks like a simple off-season shuffle is actually a crisis on the verge of collapse. The Fever came within arm's reach of the finals, only to watch everything fall apart in real time. Now, they're drowning in a perfect storm of injuries, expiring contracts, and a frozen CBA negotiation that has put the entire league on pause. But here's the real twist. The danger isn't in who they're trying to sign. It's in who they can't afford to lose.
They have a lot to deal with this offseason, but more importantly, they got a lot of revamping to do, man. Nearly making it to the WNBA Finals, finishing pretty much at the semifinals, losing superstar player Caitlin Clark. Answers are going to be had in regards to this offense, man. Kelsey Mitchell went down.
Pay attention to how he phrases it. 3 consecutive seasons of complete roster shakeups. That's not just strange, it's a red flag. Real championship organizations don't rebuild year after year. Yet the Fever have been trapped in a constant state of survival ever since drafting Caitlin Clark. And now, they're standing at the edge of their biggest gamble yet. What to do with Kelsey Mitchell? You might ask, why is that even a question? She's clearly their second-best player. Exactly. And that's what makes it complicated. When Caitlin went down with that injury in July, something surprising unfolded. The offense didn't crumble. It evolved. Mitchell, Ari McDonald, and Sydney Cooks each stepped up and proved they could carry the load. For the first time, Indiana realized they could function, even flourish, without Clark controlling every possession. And that discovery changed everything. What was supposed to be a straightforward offseason suddenly became the most pivotal and revealing test in Fever franchise history, one that will decide whether this team is built to survive or to win.
Looking like deer in the headlights as they make a decision to keep superstar player Kelsey Mitchell and try to land more. Articles has been released, kind of breaking this whole thing down, dog. That's what we finna go over right now. Let's pull it up.
They looked completely paralyzed under pressure, like deer frozen in the headlights. That's the perfect image to describe what happened. The Fever's front office thought they'd solved the equation, build around Caitlin Clark, surround her with shooters, and coast straight to the finals. But then reality punched back hard. Kelsey Mitchell struggled to handle point guard duties, and the roster was shredded by injuries. Here's the part that should send chills through Indiana fans. Multiple reports suggest those injuries weren't just bad luck. They were the direct result of Stephanie White's high-intensity coaching approach. Fast pace, relentless tempo, and heavy minutes for star players. It's a system that shines until bodies start breaking down. Now, the Fever front office is cornered by an impossible choice. Do they completely reshape their strategy to protect Caitlin Clark's long-term health? Or risk everything by assuming last season's collapse was just a one-off?
The Indiana Fever season had ended right there. But thanks to the Fever willpower, matched with Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston's brilliance and Stephanie White coaching, the team kept fighting. But after a heartbreaking exit, attention has already shifted to what's next, with the CBA negotiation casting certainly across the league.
Notice how the narrative quietly changes. Suddenly, it's all about the Fever's resilience, grit, and the rise of Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston. But the name that built the headlines all year, Caitlin Clark, disappears from the conversation. That's no accident. When Clark went down, the media didn't just pivot, they rewrote the story. The spotlight shifted from Caitlin and the Fever to the Fever proving they can win without Caitlin. And that shift has massive implications for the franchise. Because if Kelsey Mitchell truly believes she proved she can carry this team on her own, why wouldn't she test that theory? Why not demand a max deal or explore free agency, where teams like Dallas, Los Angeles, or New York would gladly make her the primary star? The Fever spent 2 seasons building their entire identity around Caitlin Clark. But in doing so, they may have accidentally given their second-best player the confidence to stop playing second.
Indiana Fever, otherwise known for their flashy and fast-paced style, had to make some adjustments. It wasn't a complete overhaul. To me, I think it was an overhaul, bro. They lost pretty much their whole damn roster.
2 major roster decisions that could define the entire offseason. That's putting it mildly. Let's pull back the curtain on what's really going on behind the scenes. Decision 1. Kelsey Mitchell's contract. She's about to hit the market as an unrestricted free agent, coming off a season that proved she's far more than a spot-up shooter next to Clark. Decision 2. Rebuilding depth after an injury apocalypse that completely wiped out their rotation. But there's also a third, unspoken decision lurking underneath everything. One the organization doesn't want to discuss publicly. Should they stay committed to Stephanie White's demanding system, or overhaul their entire approach to protect their $28 million investment in Caitlin Clark? Because truthfully, they can't have both. You can't run a high-octane, maximum-effort system for 40 games and expect your franchise player to stay healthy. Something has to give. This is where the Fever are caught between 2 worlds, preserving the identity that took them within 1 game of the WNBA Finals, and restructuring everything around their generational superstar. And here's where the contradictions start piling up. Before Caitlin's injury, people claimed the entire offense flowed through her, but that's only half true. The system was already shifting. Then came the collapse. Caitlin Clark sidelined, Ari McDonald out with a torn ACL, and an entire rotation disintegrated overnight. Now listen closely. Even team insiders can't keep the story straight. They say it wasn't a full overhaul, but it absolutely was. The Fever weren't adjusting. They were surviving. Their system vanished, their chemistry shattered, and their season spiraled into damage control. And that's what truly terrifies Indiana's front office. Because for the first time, it's clear the franchise isn't in control anymore. Right now, the Fever don't even know which version of themselves is real. Are they the near-finals contender powered by a healthy Caitlin Clark, or the fragile team that unraveled the moment their system got pressure-tested? Here's the truth. Even when Clark was on the floor, she wasn't always dominating the ball. The Fever often played her off the ball, relying on her instincts as a secondary initiator and playmaker rather than forcing everything through her hands. It wasn't a lack of teamwork, it was simply how the system evolved. But when Clark went down, everything shifted. Kelsey Mitchell, Ari McDonald, Sydney Cooks, and even Sophie Cunningham each stepped up and shared the load. The bench held things together just enough to keep the season alive. And this is where the real insight lies. The Fever didn't actually build a Caitlin Clark-centric offense. They built a balanced, motion-based system that used her as a creator, not the sole engine. When she got injured, they stumbled upon something unexpected. The offense was more flexible, more creative, and far less predictable than anyone realized. The ball zipped around, everyone contributed, and the team didn't collapse. But that revelation now creates a brutal dilemma. If your offense can function without your superstar, do you really pay top dollar to keep the entire core intact? Or do you bet everything that Caitlin's full return will elevate everyone around her to another level? Heading into the 2026 season, the Indiana Fever front office has to find that delicate balance. Their top priority should absolutely be re-signing Kelsey Mitchell, but that's only part of the puzzle. The real question now is, how can the Fever reshape and strengthen their roster without losing the identity they accidentally discovered when their superstar went down? Mitchell, Ari McDonald, Sydney Cooks, and even Sophie Cunningham each took turns carrying the offense. But notice that phrase, took turns. That's not a real offensive structure. That's survival basketball. And now, the Fever's front office is trapped in what you might call psychological quicksand. Those short-term heroics didn't just save the season. They inflated everyone's market value. Ari McDonald proved she could run an offense as a starting point guard before her injury. Sydney Cooks showed she's far more than a role player. Kelsey Mitchell demonstrated she's a legitimate #1 scoring option. And all those breakout performances make this offseason more complicated and more expensive than anyone expected. The very depth that rescued the Fever might end up crippling their financial flexibility. They can't afford to lose key players, but they also can't afford to keep them all. Heading into the 2026 season, the Fever's front office must strike a delicate balance. Their top priority? Re-sign Kelsey Mitchell. No hesitation, no distractions. This is the franchise's breaking point. The decision they make now will define the next decade of Indiana basketball. That if they give Mitchell a max contract, they're officially committing to the two-star model, Clark and Mitchell as co-leaders, with everyone else filling in around them. But if they let Mitchell walk, they're placing every ounce of faith in Caitlin Clark alone, trusting she can elevate role players into championship-level contributors. There's no middle ground, no waiting it out. And with the CBA negotiations currently frozen, the pressure is only intensifying. The second that new agreement gets signed, every WNBA team will come calling for Kelsey Mitchell. Indiana has to decide right now, before salary cap numbers are even finalized, whether they're willing to pay whatever it takes to keep their second star, and whether they can risk losing her to a team ready to make her the centerpiece. Pretty sure Ari McDonald's stock has skyrocketed, but the uncertainty around her recovery looms large. After the kind of injury she suffered, nobody really knows if she'll return as the same explosive player. Still, there's a huge upside to bringing her back. She already knows the system. She's comfortable at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and she's proven she can thrive in Indiana's culture. But here's where things get even trickier. Listen closely. There's hesitation in every statement from the front office. They know they need to reload at the guard position. Caitlin Clark will return, yes, but Ari McDonald has to be re-signed if they want to maintain that backcourt chemistry. Now we're watching the domino effect unfold. It's not just about Kelsey Mitchell anymore. It's McDonald, whose value exploded right before her ACL tear. It's about whether she can come back with the same speed and defensive tenacity. And beyond that, it's about how the Fever can afford to sign multiple guards, rebuild their frontcourt depth, boost bench scoring, and restore defensive flexibility. All within a compressed window once the CBA negotiations finally wrap up. While other teams are already planning and strategizing, the Fever are stuck in paralysis, trying to please everyone while knowing it's mathematically impossible to keep the entire roster intact. Then, just as the front office wrestles with roster chaos, boom, the narrative flips. Caitlin Clark is named to the Associated Press all-time starting five of women's college basketball, alongside Cheryl Miller, Candace Parker, Brianna Stewart, and Diana Taurasi. That's not just a milestone, it's a pressure amplifier. Because now, it's no longer about simply building a competitive team around Clark. It's about building a championship dynasty around one of the five greatest college players in history. And that's the new psychological trap the Fever just walked into. Caitlin Clark's college legacy is untouchable, record breaker, icon, Mount Rushmore status. But her WNBA legacy? That story is still being written. And how Indiana handles this next chapter will determine whether she becomes a legend in two eras, or just one. And here's the harsh reality. If the Fever fumble this offseason, if they lose Kelsey Mitchell or fail to rebuild the right depth around Caitlin Clark, her entire professional career could turn into one massive what-if. This isn't just roster management anymore, it's legacy management. The front office isn't shaping a team, they're shaping basketball history. And just when it couldn't get more complicated, another storm hit. The commissioner problem. Lisa Leslie said it best when she recalled what happened during the championship ceremony. When WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert took the stage to hand over the trophy, she was booed so loudly that people inside the arena could barely hear her speak. It wasn't a small reaction, it was a public revolt. Lisa tried to frame it positively, saying it showed how deeply fans care about the players, that the boos were really a demand for better profit sharing and fair treatment. But let's be honest, this wasn't about excitement or passion. This was about a complete breakdown of trust between the league office and its own supporters. And that's where this ties directly back to the Fever, the same commissioner being booed. Off the stage is the one leading the CBA negotiations, the very talks that have frozen all offseason movement and left Indiana in limbo. So now, the Fever aren't just battling salary caps and roster limits. They're fighting against league-wide instability, fan frustration, and leadership chaos. And until that chaos is resolved, Caitlin Clark's future and the Fever's dynasty dreams remain stuck on pause. Listen carefully to Lisa Leslie's wording. I think one of the most important things is profit sharing. Translation: the players are preparing to demand a much bigger share of league revenue, and the owners are gearing up for a fight. That means the CBA negotiations could drag on for months, leaving every front office, especially Indiana's, frozen in place. And that's the nightmare scenario for the Fever. Their window to re-sign Kelsey Mitchell, Ari McDonald, and their key role players could shrink from an off-season to just a few frantic weeks or even days. Eventually, the CBA will get done. It has to. Neither side can afford a lockout. When it does, the new deal will likely bring a higher salary cap, boosted by the Caitlin Clark effect, skyrocketing ratings, ticket sales, and sponsorships. That sounds like a win for Indiana, but it's actually a trap. A higher cap means every team suddenly has more money to spend. So Mitchell won't just be fielding offers from the Fever. She'll be getting max deals from Dallas, New York, Los Angeles, and any contender desperate for a proven scorer. The Fever's edge isn't financial, it's chemistry, culture, and the promise of playing alongside Caitlin Clark. But the question is that enough? We're about to find out if the Indiana front office can turn the toughest offseason in franchise history into their smartest rebuild yet. Because if they misplay this, if they hesitate, overthink, or try to save a few million, they won't just lose Kelsey Mitchell. They'll lose their only real chance to maximize Caitlin Clark's prime years. So, the question becomes, should the Fever lock in Mitchell no matter the cost? Or bet everything on Clark's ability to elevate whoever stands beside her?